She gave 22 years to this marriage and never got a drop of love back. Just neglect. Just a daily fight to survive. She took all the pain, swallowed all the hurt just for her child. And today, that same child has turned her back on her. Now she finally says, I just want to be free. I have no complaints left and no fight left in me. But how does a person break down like this? How did her life end up here? What was that hidden pain she carried for decades, never telling a soul? A girl, a wife, a mother. How did she get trapped in a life that felt like a cage with no way out? Today, we're going to listen to that untold story, the story of 22 years of silent tears. A story about duty, fear, what society thinks, and a mother's sacrifice. So let's step into her world slowly. I'm Sneha, and I'm right here with you. The story begins in a quiet, leafy suburb, perhaps in the rolling hills of Virginia, or maybe the outskirts of Seattle, where the mist hugs the evergreen trees in the morning. It is a place where the lawns are perfectly manicured and the houses stand tall and proud, painted in shades of cream, slate blue, and soft grey. In one of these houses, a beautiful two-storey colonial with a wide porch, lived a woman named Clara. To anyone driving past, the house looked like a picture from a magazine. It had big bay windows that caught the afternoon sun. It had a sturdy oak door that seemed to promise warmth and safety. In the driveway, there was always a sensible car. In the backyard, a swing set that had seen many seasons. But inside, the air held a different kind of stillness. It was the stillness of a clock ticking in an empty room. Tick-tock, tick-tock. For 22 years, Clara had been the keeper of this house. 22 years is a long time. It is enough time for a sapling to become a mighty oak. It is enough time for a generation to rise. And for Clara, it was enough time to build an entire world. But as she moved through the hallways, her hand trailing along the smooth wooden banister, she often wondered about the nature of the world she had built. It was a world of silence, a world of routine. Clara's life was a beautifully conducting symphony, but the music was very quiet. Her days began before the sun. She would wake up in a bed that felt vast, the sheets cool and crisp on the side where only pillows lay. Her husband, whom we shall call David, was rarely there. David was a man of the world outside, and he was a man of business, of travel, of important meetings in cities that sparkled with lights far away from their quiet street. He was the provider. He built the walls of their life with money, with transactions, with logistics. In the early years, Clara had waited for something more. She had waited for the poetry. She had waited for the long, whispered conversations in the dark, but over the last 2 decades, the poetry had turned into a ledger book. Her world became a series of tasks, a series of lists. Think of the onions. In the kitchen, Clara would stand by the granite countertop, the morning light filtering through the blinds, casting striped shadows on the floor. She would chop vegetables for dinner, chop, chop, chop. The rhythm was hypnotic. It wasn't just onions, of course. In this modern life, it was the groceries. It was the endless stream of household supplies. It was making sure the pantry was full, the refrigerator stocked with the specific brands of juice, the right kind of cheese, the organic milk. And then there were the messages. In a world where people connect instantly, Clara's connection to her husband was filtered through the glowing screen of a phone. It was a relationship of text on a screen. Did the mortgage payment go through? Send me the tax documents. I will be in New York for another week. There were no words of endearment. No, I miss you. No, how was your day? Just the logistics of survival. It was a world of money. A world of maintenance. Clara would sit in her living room surrounded by comfortable furniture, staring at the phone in her hand. The screen was a window into a life that felt like a business arrangement. She was the manager of his estate, the caretaker of his children, the guardian of his reputation. She remembered being 22 years old herself. She remembered the girl she used to be, full of hope, full of dreams about what love would look like. She thought marriage would be a partnership of souls, But slowly, layer by layer, like the peeling of an onion, she realised that her role was simply to exist, to keep the machine running. Sometimes the silence of the house felt heavy. You know that feeling when you're in a room full of people, yet you feel completely alone? Clara felt that even when the house was empty. It was the echo of neglect. Neglect is a strange thing. It isn't a shout. It isn't a hit. It isn't a storm. Neglect is a slow erosion. It is the wind wearing down the stone, grain by grain, year after year. David was a stranger who paid the bills. He knew how to survive in the world of commerce, but he did not know how to survive in the world of the heart. And Clara, the wife of this stranger, learned how hard it was to keep standing when the foundation of emotional support was missing. There were days when the sadness would wash over her like a gentle tide. She would sit on the edge of her bed, the afternoon sun dipping below the horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of purple and bruised orange. Tears would come, silent and hot. She was an injured mother, a woman whose heart had been bruised not by malice, but by absence. 22 years. How many times had he come home in those years? He would arrive like a guest, his suitcase rolling over the hardwood floors with a hollow rumble. He would stay for a few days, checking the maintenance of the house, checking the growth of the children, and then he would leave again. He gave her 3 beautiful daughters, 3 stars in her dark sky, and it was because of them that she stayed. This is the anchor that holds so many ships in the harbour, even when they wish to sail away. The children. In the beginning, when the loneliness first started to settle in like a thick fog, Clara thought about leaving. She would stand by the front door, her hand on the brass knob, imagining walking out, imagining a small apartment somewhere, quiet and mine. But then the fear would set in, the societal whisper. What will people say? In the suburbs, appearances are everything. The neighbours saw the manicured lawn, the new cars, the well-dressed children. They saw a successful family. If she left, she would shatter that illusion. And more importantly, what would happen to the girls? She would look at them when they were small, sleeping in their cribs, their chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. They needed a father, she told herself, or at least the idea of a father. They needed the security that his money provided. They needed the future he could buy for them. If I leave, she would think, their world will crumble. I cannot let my unhappiness become their misfortune. So she let go of the doorknob. She turned back into the house. She went back to the kitchen, back to the onions, back to the messages. She began to accept the neglect. She learned to wear it like a heavy winter coat that you just get used to carrying. She adapted. The human spirit is incredibly resilient. It can find a way to normalise almost anything. Clara normalised the silence. She found comfort in the routine. The hum of the refrigerator became her companion. The sound of the washing machine swirling the clothes round and round became the soundtrack of her afternoons. She poured all the love that she didn't receive into the walls of the house and into the lives of her daughters. She baked cookies that smelled of vanilla and cinnamon, filling the air with sweetness to mask the bitterness in her heart. She ironed the clothes until they were crisp and perfect. She drove the carpools, attended the parent-teacher conferences, and smiled at the other mothers who seemed so happy. She was the perfect actor in her own life. As the years went by, the girls grew. They grew from toddlers to teenagers, filling the house with their own noise, their own music, their own dramas. And Clara absorbed it all. She was the sponge that soaked up every spill, every tear, every moment of tension. But deep down, in the quiet moments before sleep took her, she knew she was broken. Being broken sounds violent, but for Clara, it was soft. It was like a piece of china that has been glued back together. It still holds tea. It still looks beautiful on the shelf, but if you look closely, you can see the hairline cracks. You can see that it is fragile. Yet she could not leave the world she had created. As we close this chapter of Clara's life, imagine her now. It is late at night. The house is finally quiet. The girls are asleep in their rooms upstairs. The phone on the nightstand is dark. No messages from David tonight. Clara walks to the window and looks out at the moon hanging high above the pine trees. The moonlight turns the driveway into a ribbon of silver. She is tired, not just in her body, but in her soul. But she is still here. She is still standing. She has survived another day of the routine. She pulls the curtains closed, shutting out the night. She climbs into the cool, empty bed and pulls the duvet up to her shoulders. She closes her eyes and for a moment there is peace. The peace of sleep. The only place where she doesn't have to wait for a message. The only place where she is free. Let us leave Clara there, safe in the embrace of her dreams, resting for whatever tomorrow may bring. Sleep well, Clara. And you, listening to this, let the image of that quiet moonlit house fade gently from your mind. Let the silence of the room wrap around you like a warm hug. You are safe, you are calm, and you are ready to drift into a deep, restful sleep. If you were to walk into Clara's kitchen late at night, you would often find her sitting at the island, the marble cool beneath her fingertips. The only light in the room would come from the small glowing rectangle of her phone. In this modern age, we are told that we are more connected than ever. But for Clara, the phone was not a bridge. It was a wall. It was the device through which her marriage existed. Her husband, David, lived his life in time zones that were always ahead of hers or behind hers. He was a voice on a wire, a string of text bubbles on a screen, a notification that appeared and disappeared. This was the world of messengers she lived in. In the early years, when he first started travelling for work to Chicago, to London, to Singapore, Clara used to wait for the phone to ring with a flutter in her chest. She would imagine he would call to say, "I saw a sunset today and thought of you," or "I missed the sound of your voice." But over 22 years, the nature of the calls had changed. They had crystallised into something hard and efficient. The phone would buzz. Clara would answer, "Hello?" Her voice would be soft. Hopeful. "Clara," his voice would come through, often tinny, distorted by poor reception or the speakerphone of a car driving down a highway somewhere far away. "Did you get the notification from the bank?" That was the language of their love now. It was the language of currency. The user mentioned a world of onions and money. And indeed, that is what it felt like. Sometimes Clara would be preparing a meal, slicing through the layers of an onion, the sharp scent filling the air, making her eyes water, and the phone would ring. She would wipe her hands on her apron and pick it up, hoping for a moment of connection. But the conversation would be about the mortgage. It would be about the tuition fees for the girls. It would be about the credit card statement. "I transferred the funds," he would say. "Make sure the roof repair is scheduled." "I will," she would reply. "How are you? Have you been eating well?" "I'm busy, Clara. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. I have to go." Click. The silence that followed that click was louder than any shout. It was a strange kind of grief. Maya, or Clara as we call her in this version, got nothing of his heart. She received the wire transfers. She received the security. She lived in a beautiful house that the money built, but the house was cold. She was the wife of a stranger. It is a profound loneliness to be married to someone you no longer know. She knew his social security number. She knew his passwords. She knew which airlines he preferred, but she did not know what he dreamed about anymore. She did not know what he feared, and he certainly did not know her. He did not know how hard it was to survive in the world of the suburbs without a partner. He didn't see the leaky faucets she fixed. He didn't see the nights she sat up with a feverish child, rocking them back to sleep while he slept in a hotel room with blackout curtains. He didn't see the onion tears, the tears that she blamed on the cooking, but were really about the emptiness. This 22-year-old woman inside her, the one who had been crushed by the neglect, was still there, somewhere deep inside the capable, organised mother. There was a young girl crying. She was an injured mother, carrying the weight of the family on one shoulder and the weight of rejection on the other. 22 years. He had come back to the country, back to this house sporadically, like a comet passing by the earth, just close enough to be seen, but too far away to feel the warmth. He had given her 3 daughters, and for that she was grateful. They were the flowers in her garden, but the gardener was never there to see them bloom. The lack of a husband is one thing, but the lack of good use, the feeling of being undervalued, of being simply a tool to keep his domestic life running, that broke her down. Every day, a little piece of her confidence would chip away. Maybe I am not worth loving, she would think, staring at the dark screen of the phone. Maybe this is all I deserve, a transaction, a business arrangement. She would scroll through old messages, looking for a sign of affection. Flight landed. Meeting ran late. Send the account number. Not a single heart, not a single love you. The cruelty was not in what he said, but in what he didn't say. It was the vast, empty space where love should have been. And yet she could not leave. In this chapter of her life, the chains were heavy. Not chains of iron, but chains of obligation. She would look around the kitchen. The stainless steel appliances hummed their steady rhythm. The granite countertop shone under the recessed lighting. This was the world. This was the society she belonged to. If she left, the chaos would begin. Once you are married, she whispered to herself, echoing the thoughts of generations of women before her. You stay. You make it work. She thought of the whispers at the grocery store. She thought of the pity in the eyes of the other mothers at the school gate. Oh, poor Clara. Her husband finally left her. She couldn't bear the thought of the scandal. She couldn't bear the thought of disrupting the fragile ecosystem she had built for her children. What will happen to my girls? She asked the empty room. What will happen to their future without their father's support, without the stability of this house? So she made a choice, a quiet, painful choice. She chose to adapt. She chose to accept the hundreds of small neglects. She chose to swallow the indifference. She taught herself to stop expecting the phone to bring love. She taught herself to see the wire transfer as a form of care, even if it felt cold. She accepted the world of messengers and money. As we bring this chapter to a close, visualise Clara placing the phone face down on the counter. She turns off the kitchen lights. Darkness floods the room, soft and velvety. She walks up the stairs one step at a time. Her movement is slow, heavy but steady. She checks on the girls one last time. 3 doors, 3 sleeping faces, 3 reasons to keep going. She enters her own room, the room that belongs to her and the ghost of her husband. She lies down. The house settles around her with a creak and a sigh. The phone is far away downstairs. The voices on the wire are silent for the night. There is no more waiting for today. There is only the quiet, the necessary quiet. She closes her eyes and the world of money fades away. The world of onions and tears fades away. All that is left is the rhythm of her own breath. In and out, in and out. She is still here. She is strong. And for now, she can rest. Sleep, Clara. The wires are silent. The night is yours. And you listening, let the silence of the phone be a comfort to you. You do not need to answer anyone right now. You do not need to check any messages. You are free from the demands of the world. Let you often wonder why people stay in places where the flowers do not bloom. Why did Clara stay in a house that felt so empty of romantic love? Why did she endure the silence of the phone and the coldness of the world of messengers? The answer lay in the rooms down the hall. The rooms painted in soft pinks and lilacs. The rooms where her 3 daughters slept. Clara was not just a woman. She was a harbour. And her children were the small boat she had to protect from the storm. In the beginning, when the neglect first started to sting like winter wind, Clara had thought of leaving. She had stood by the window watching the cars drive by, dreaming of escape. But then, the questions would rise up like a wall. If I leave, she thought, the world will shake. Even in this modern Western world, there is a fear of the broken home. Clara worried about the whispers. What would society say? Perhaps they would say she gave up too soon. Perhaps they would say she failed. But more than the voices of strangers, she feared for the future of her children. She looked at her daughters, so small, so innocent. They believed their father was a hero who travelled the world. They didn't know about the lonely onions in the kitchen. They didn't know about the lack of love. What will happen to my children if I break this family apart? She asked herself. What will their future look like without their father's roof over their heads? She imagined them growing up in 2 different houses, packing bags every weekend, living a fractured life. She imagined the financial struggle, the uncertainty. And so Clara made a silent bargain with the universe. She decided to be the buffer. She decided to absorb the shock. She began to accept the hundreds of neglects. She adapted to the world of indifference. When her husband's mental pressure, the subtle, quiet torture of being ignored, became heavy, she visualised her daughters. She visualised them growing up strong and whole. I will take the pain, she whispered to the mirror, so they don't have to. As the years flowed by like a slow river, the daughters grew. They turned into teenagers with bright eyes and big dreams, and Clara's fear shifted. She wasn't just protecting their childhood anymore, she was protecting their future happiness. She wanted them to see a stable home, even if it was a stage play. She thought, if I leave now, if I shatter the picture of this family, how will they ever trust in marriage? How will they find good partners if they see their mother alone and struggling? It is a heavy burden for a mother to carry, the belief that her own suffering is the price of her children's future joy. She wanted her eldest daughter to marry well. She wanted her to have the fairy tale that Clara never got. And in her mind, that meant keeping the family intact. It meant smiling at the graduation parties while standing next to a husband who felt like a stranger. It meant hosting the holiday dinners, carving the turkey and pretending that everything was perfect. This was the mental pain of day after day. It wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It was a dull ache like an old injury that flares up when it rains. But Clara bore it with a grace that no one saw. She found her happiness in theirs. When her daughter laughed, Clara felt the warmth. When her daughter succeeded in school, Clara felt the pride. When the children were happy, the neglect of the husband didn't sting quite as much. She stopped trying to leave the world she had built. She became rooted in it. She was the oak tree in the backyard. Her bark was weathered. Her branches had weathered many storms, and maybe she didn't get enough sunlight for herself, but she provided shade. She provided a place for the birds to sing. She stayed for the illusion. Because sometimes the illusion is the only shield a mother has. As the eldest daughter grew into a young woman ready to find her own way in the world, Clara felt a mixture of relief and fear. She had done it. She had kept the boat afloat long enough for them to learn how to sail. She had accepted a life of emotional solitude so that her daughter could walk down the aisle of life with her head held high, coming from a good family. It was a sacrifice of the highest order, a silent martyrdom of the suburbs. And tonight, as we look at Clara in our mind's eye, we see a woman who is tired, yes, but we also see a woman of immense strength. She is sitting in the living room. The house is still. Pictures of her daughters line the mantelpiece, smiling faces, graduation caps, prom dresses. These are her trophies. These are the reasons she stayed. She traces the frame of a photograph with her finger. A small smile plays on her lips. She may not have had the love of a husband. She may not have had the romance of the movies, but she had this. She had the safety of her children. And in the quiet of the night, she tells herself it was worth it. For them, it was worth it. The wind outside whispers through the pine trees, a gentle shh. It is the sound of the world acknowledging her sacrifice. Clara turns off the lamp. The room plunges into a soft, comforting darkness. She is not leaving this world. She is the foundation of it. She breathes out a long, steady exhale. The anchor is holding. The ship is safe. And you, my friend, you are safe too. You are held by the gravity of the earth, anchored in your warm bed. The storms of the past are over. The worries of the future are far away. There's only the gentle sway of the present, rocking you, soothing you, holding you. Rest now. Like a boat in a calm harbour, rest. Yourself float in this peaceful disconnect. Just you and the quiet. Next time is a river that flows only in one direction. Clara watched the years pass, marking time by the height of her children. The focus of her world, the eldest daughter, let's call her Sarah, had grown into a woman. Sarah was the one for whom Clara had stayed. Sarah was the reason Clara had swallowed the silence, the neglect, and the loneliness for 22 years. Clara had imagined a moment of triumph. She thought that when Sarah grew up, they would be allies. They would look at each other and understand the silent pact they had shared. She thought Sarah would say, "Thank you, Mum. Thank you for standing strong so I could have this life." A few months ago, there was a wedding. It was a beautiful affair in the garden. White chairs on the lawn, flowers blooming in bursts of peach and cream. Clara stood there watching her daughter in a white dress, looking radiant. Clara felt a swelling in her chest. Not just pride, but relief. She had done her job. She had delivered her child safely to the shore of adulthood. But fate, as they say, often writes a different ending than the one we expect. It is a strange and painful irony of life. A mother endures the storms to protect the sapling, but when the sapling becomes a tree, it sometimes forgets the soil that nourished it. Shortly after the wedding, the winds changed. Sarah, perhaps influenced by the complexities of her new life, or perhaps influenced by the narratives of a father who was charming to everyone but his wife, began to pull away. It started small, a missed call here, a short text there. But soon the silence grew thick and heavy. For reasons Clara could not fully understand, misunderstandings, old shadows, or simply the confusion of youth, Sarah became angry. The daughter she had protected from the world's harshness suddenly turned her back. She stopped communicating. The phone, which had always been a source of anxiety with her husband, now became a source of heartbreak with her daughter. Clara would look at the device. She would see Sarah's name, but there was a wall there now. Don't talk to your mother seemed to be the unspoken rule. It is a profound sorrow, the kind that doesn't make a sound. The mother breed, as one might say, is cursed with a memory that only holds love. Clara didn't remember the teenage tantrums or the harsh words. She only remembered the small hand in hers. She only remembered the bedtime stories. But the child sometimes forgets. The illusion Clara had fought so hard to preserve, the illusion of a happy, united family, had worked too well. Perhaps Sarah didn't know the depth of the sacrifice. Perhaps she didn't know that her mother had stayed in a loveless marriage just for her. So Sarah drifted away. Like a leaf that decides it no longer needs the branch, she let go. She was angry, distant, and unreachable. Clara sat in her sunroom watching the autumn leaves fall from the maple tree in the backyard. One by one, they let go. They didn't ask the tree for permission. They just flew away on the wind. Clara realised that she could not force the leaf to stay. The pain was there, yes, it was a dull, aching pressure in her chest. The cruelty of it was sharp, to be rejected by the very person for whom you sacrificed your own happiness. But in this quiet house, Clara learned a new lesson. She learned about the limits of control. She had controlled her temper for 22 years. She had controlled her desires. She had controlled her tongue. But she could not control the heart of another, even her own child. She watched a single red leaf detach from a high branch. It spun slowly, catching the sunlight, twisting and turning until it landed softly on the grass. This is the way of things, Clara whispered to the empty room. Children grow, they leave. Sometimes they leave with a smile, and sometimes they leave with a storm. She did not scream. She did not fight. She simply witnessed the departure. She was the mother, The one who stays, the one who remains rooted even when the branches are bare. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor, Clara felt a strange sense of stillness. The worst had happened. The rejection she feared had come, and yet she was still breathing. The house was still standing. She was still Clara. The wind blew outside, a gentle gust that rattled the window panes softly. Rattle, hush, rattle, hush. It was the sound of the world moving on. Clara closed her eyes, imagining the leaves covering the ground like a golden blanket. She decided to let go for tonight. She would not check the phone. She would not replay the hurtful silence in her mind. She would just be the tree, deeply rooted, patient, waiting for the winter to pass. Sleep now, Clara. The wind has died down. The leaves are at rest on the ground. And you, listening to this story, let yourself feel that same sense of release. Like a leaf letting go of the branch, let go of your worries, let go of your expectations, float down, down, down into the soft, welcoming embrace of sleep. You are light. You are free. You are drifting. In the hallway of Clara's house, there sat a small table with a lamp and a telephone. It was an old-fashioned nook, a remnant of a time when phone calls were events, not interruptions. Clara stood there, her hand hovering over the receiver. The house was quiet, but her heart was loud. It beat a rhythm of longing. Thump, 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 thump. It had been days since she had heard Sarah's voice. The silence between them was a canyon that kept widening. And for a mother, silence from a child is not peaceful, it is deafening. There is a saying that the heart of a mother is a strange thing. It is resilient, yes, but it is also stubbornly attached. As the story goes, the mother breed is bad, not in malice, but in its inability to let go. Others can leave. Husbands can travel to distant lands and forget to call. Children can grow up and walk away into their own futures. But the mother? She cannot leave the illusion of the child. She is tied to them by an invisible cord that stretches, tangles, but never breaks. Clara knew Sarah was angry. She knew about the blocked numbers and the unanswered texts. The indignity of it stung to be shut out by the girl she had raised, the girl for whom she had endured 22 years of a cold marriage. But the need to hear her voice was stronger than the pride. Clara picked up the phone. It wasn't her cell phone. It was the landline, a number Sarah might not recognise immediately, or perhaps a number she hadn't blocked yet. It was a small act of desperation, masked as a check-in, just to hear a sound, just to know she was okay. Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she pressed the buttons. Beep, beep, beep. She lifted the handset to her ear and listened to the ring. It was a lonely sound, a long, purring trill that seemed to echo down the empty hallway. Ring, ring, and then a click. The line opened. Hello? The voice was crisp. It was Sarah. For a split second, time stood still. Clara closed her eyes, drinking in the sound of that single word. It was the voice she had taught to speak. It was the voice that used to whisper, "Mommy, look at me," from the playground slide. So Clara opened her mouth to speak, to say, "It's me. I just wanted to tell you I love you." But she didn't get the chance, and on the other end of the line, there was a pause, a realisation, the intuition of a daughter sensing the mother's presence even through the silence of the wire. And then, click. The line went dead. The dial tone returned, a flat, humming drone. Hum. She had hung up. Clara slowly pulled the phone away from her ear. She looked at it for a moment, not with anger, but with a deep, sorrowful understanding. She was used to this. For 22 years, she had digested the neglect of a husband who forgot her value. She had swallowed the insults of a world that reduced her to a manager of accounts and onions. She had learned to metabolize pain and turn it into survival. And now she was doing the same with her daughter. She placed the receiver back in its cradle. Click. She did not cry. The tears had all been used up years ago. Instead, she stood in the hallway, letting the echo of that hello fade into the woodwork. She accepted the insult. She accepted the rejection because she understood something that Sarah did not yet know. That love in its purest form is sometimes just standing there waiting to be needed again. Clara walked back to the living room. She sat down in her favourite armchair, the one that faced the window. Outside, the street lamps were glowing with a soft amber light. The world kept turning. People were sleeping, dreaming, living. She told herself she is safe. She is alive. That is enough for tonight. The pain was there, settling in her chest like a heavy stone, but Clara wrapped her patience around it. She was the mother. She could bear it. She had borne everything else. The house seemed to sigh around her. The floorboards settled. The refrigerator hummed. The grandfather clock in the foyer ticked its steady, comforting beat. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Time heals, they say. Or if it doesn't heal, it smooths the edges. Clara leaned her head back against the chair. She let her hands rest in her lap, palms open, releasing the need to control, releasing the need to be heard. She was just a presence in the quiet house, a guardian of the memory of love. And as you listen to the steady rhythm of the clock in your mind, let the rejection fade away, let the hurt dissolve into the amber light of the street lamp. You are not waiting for a call. You are not waiting for anyone to validate you. You are here, complete and whole in the comfort of your own rest. The hallway is quiet now. The phone is silent. All is well. Drift deeper into the cushion of the night, deeper and deeper. It was the hour just before dawn, the time when the world is painted in shades of charcoal and deep indigo. The birds had not yet begun to sing and the streetlights were beginning to flicker, sensing the approach of the sun. Clara sat in the kitchen. The phone lay on the table in front of her. Her husband, David, was on the other end. For the first time in years, the conversation was not about bank transfers or grocery lists. He was talking about the end. He was talking in his usual pragmatic, business-like tone about letting her go. He spoke of separation. He spoke of papers. He spoke of moving on. In the past, this conversation would have terrified Clara. It would have filled her with the panic of the unknown. What about the girls? What about society? What about the house? But tonight, something had shifted in the atmosphere. Clara looked out the window at the dark silhouette of the pine trees. She thought of Sarah. She thought of the daughter for whom she had digested the suffering of 22 years. She thought of the sacrifices, the swallowed words, the lonely nights, the tears hidden behind the chopping of onions. And she thought of the dial tone, the click, the silence from the daughter who had forgotten her. The realization washed over Clara, not like a wave of pain, but like a wave of cool water cleansing a wound. The contract is over, she thought. She had stayed for the child. She had endured the mental torture, the neglect and the coldness of the world of messengers solely to protect the child's illusion of a happy home. But the child had grown. The child had walked away. The child had forgotten the source of her safety. If the reason for the prison no longer exists, why stay in the cell? David was still talking on the phone, his voice a low drone. I think it's best if we just... Clara interrupted him. Her voice was not loud. It was soft, like the rustle of dry leaves, but it was steady. David, she said. He stopped. You are right, she whispered. Let me go. She didn't ask for alimony. She didn't scream about the 22 years of lost love. She didn't list the grievances or the nights she had cried herself to sleep. She simply surrendered. I have no more complaints, she said into the receiver. I have no fight left. I have no power to argue. Just let me be free. It was the most honest thing she had ever said. She had no power to change him. She had no power to force her daughter to call. She had no power to rewrite the past. And in admitting she had no power, she found the ultimate freedom. She hung up the phone. Click. For the last time, the connection was broken, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt light. Clara stood up as she walked to the back door and opened it. The cool morning air rushed in, smelling of dew and damp earth. She stepped out onto the porch. The sky in the east was beginning to soften. A faint line of pale violet was bleeding into the darkness. The dawn was coming. Clara took a deep breath. For 22 years, she had been a wife. She had been a mother. She had been a manager of a household. She had been a victim of neglect. But standing there in the quiet of the morning, she was none of those things. She was just a soul. She realised that the suffering was over because she had decided it was over. She didn't need the apology she would never get. She didn't need the gratitude that would never come. She was free. She imagined the heavy coat of her responsibilities sliding off her shoulders and dissolving into the mist. The onions, the money, the messengers, they were all part of a story that was finished. A single bird began to sing from the top of the pine tree, a clear, piercing note of joy. Clara closed her eyes and smiled, a genuine small smile. She was tired, yes, but it was a good tired. It was the tiredness of a traveller who has finally put down a heavy backpack after a long hike. She turned back to the house, but she didn't see a cage anymore. She just saw a building, walls and a roof. It did not hold her. She walked back inside, turned off the kitchen light and walked to her bedroom. The bed looked soft and inviting, a cloud of white waiting to catch her. She lay down, pulling the quilt up to her chin. The room was silent. The phone was silent. The world was silent. Clara closed her eyes. The violet light of dawn was gently pressing against her eyelids. She had survived. She had endured. And now she was going to sleep. Not the sleep of escape, but the sleep of restoration. She let go of the husband. She let go of the daughter. She let go of the pain. She drifted and drifted and drifted. Closing relaxation. And now, as we leave Clara to her well-earned rest, I invite you to do the same. The story is done. The conflict is resolved. The dawn has broken for her and the night has deepened for you. Feel the peace of that final release. You have no more responsibilities tonight. You have no complaints. You have no battles to fight. You're simply here. You are safe. You are free. Let the silence wrap around you like a warm, soft blanket. Let your breathing become slow and rhythmic, in and out, in and out. The world of messengers and money is far away. There's only the world of dreams now. Good night.